Every town has at least one story it tells more softly than the others, passed along not as a warning, but as a kind of secret gift. And in the small hillside town where Nora had come to spend her autumn, that story belonged to a house at the end of Willow Lane. She had come to this particular town almost by accident, choosing it from a list of unfamiliar names on a map spread across her kitchen table one restless evening, drawn by nothing more specific than the promise of hills and quiet and a guest house with good reviews. She had been writing, or trying to write, for the better part of a year now, a novel that kept slipping sideways whenever she tried to hold it steady, and she had come to believe, perhaps optimistically, that a change of scenery might loosen whatever had grown so stubbornly stuck in her chest. She had heard about the house on her second evening in town from the woman who ran the little guest house where Nora was staying, a woman with kind eyes and a habit of pausing thoughtfully before she said anything she considered important. They had been sitting together on the guest house porch, watching the last light fade behind the hills, a pot of tea cooling slowly between them, when the woman had mentioned it almost in passing, the way people mention things they've grown so used to that they forget how strange those things might sound to someone new. "You'll want to walk out past the old orchard sometime," the woman had said, refilling Nora's cup of tea. "There's a house out there, right at the end of Willow Lane. Folks call it the house where it always rains." Nora had laughed softly at first, assuming it was simply a colorful nickname, the sort of thing small towns liked to attach to old, weathered buildings, some local eccentric perhaps, or a house with a particularly leaky roof that had earned itself a reputation over the years. But the woman had shaken her head gently, her expression entirely serious, though not unkind. "No, dear, I mean it rains there," she said. "Properly rains. Every day, all year, rain or shine everywhere else in town. Nobody quite knows why. It's been that way as long as anyone here can remember, long before my time, and my grandmother used to talk about it same as I'm talking about it now." She paused, considering her next words carefully, the way she always did. "Old Thomas lives out there now. Kind man, bit solitary, but kind. His family's kept that house for generations, near as anyone can tell." "And nobody's ever figured out why it rains only there?" Nora asked, unable to keep the curiosity in her voice. "Plenty have tried over the years," the woman smiled faintly. "Scientists came through, must be 30 years back now, with all manner of equipment, measuring this and that, left again a week later without a proper answer, far as I ever heard. Some things just are what they are, I suppose, whether or not we manage to explain them properly." Nora had come to this town, as she often did on her longer breaks from the city, with not much of a plan beyond simply resting, walking, and writing when the mood struck her. And something about this small, strange, gently offered story settled into her thoughts immediately and refused to leave. She spent the following 2 days telling herself she would visit the house eventually, in no particular hurry, letting the idea steep the way a good cup of tea does, deepening in flavor the longer it sat. She mentioned it once to another guest at breakfast, an older gentleman traveling alone, and he had simply nodded, unsurprised, as though the house were as ordinary a local landmark as the church or the war memorial in the town square. On the third afternoon, with the sky elsewhere in town holding a wide, undecided gray that threatened rain without quite committing to it, Nora finally set out along the road that led past the old orchard, its trees heavy with the last of the season's apples, unpicked and slowly softening on the branch. A few had fallen already, scattered across the grass beneath the trees, their sweet, slightly fermented smell drifting toward her as she passed, mixing with the damp, earthy scent of the turning season. The road narrowed gradually beyond the orchard, the neat hedgerows giving way to looser, wilder growth, bramble and long grass leaning in from both sides, as though the town itself were gradually losing interest in maintaining this particular stretch of path. She passed a single weathered signpost pointing the way towards several outlying farms, Willow Lane listed last among them, in lettering so faded she had to lean close to read it properly. Beyond the signpost, the road grew quieter still, the last scattered farmhouses of the town's outskirts giving way to open, rolling fields, a few sheep placidly grazing in the distance, entirely unbothered by the widening gray sky above them. Willow Lane, when she finally reached its sign, half swallowed by ivy and leaning slightly to one side, proved to be little more than a dirt track winding gently downhill through a stand of old willow trees, their long branches trailing low enough in places to brush against her shoulders as she passed beneath them. The air here felt different somehow, cooler and more mineral, carrying a faint, clean scent she associated, without quite being able to say why, with rain that had not yet fallen. The willows themselves seemed unusually vivid for the season, their leaves a deep, healthy green rather than the yellowing gold of the trees she had passed near the orchard, as though something about this particular stretch of lane kept them permanently, gently watered against the usual turning of autumn. She noticed the house's rain before she noticed the house itself. A soft, steady patter reached her first, distinct from the dry rustle of willow leaves around her, growing gradually clearer as she continued down the lane until she rounded a final gentle curve and saw it there ahead of her, exactly as the woman at the guest house had described. The house stood alone in a small sloping clearing, a modest two-story building of grey stone and dark timber, its roof steep and slick, its windows glowing faintly gold despite the still bright afternoon around it. And there, contained within some invisible boundary that seemed to follow the exact shape of the house's small garden, rain fell steadily, straight down, untouched by any wind, while everywhere beyond that boundary the world remained entirely dry, the surrounding trees and grass still catching only the pale, undecided light of the wider afternoon sky. Nora stood at the edge of that boundary for a long moment, watching the strange, precise line where dry ground gave way to wet, a line so clean and deliberate it might have been drawn with a ruler, rain falling steadily on one side, while the willow leaves just beyond it stayed perfectly dry. A single fallen leaf lay balanced right along the boundary itself, half of it darkened with rain, the other half still pale and dry, as though the house's strange weather had simply decided, with perfect unbothered precision, exactly where its jurisdiction ended. She stepped forward experimentally, holding one hand out ahead of her, and felt the first cool drops land against her palm the instant she crossed that invisible line. Gentle and entirely ordinary, rain exactly as rain always felt, save for the impossible fact of where it had chosen to fall. She laughed quietly to herself, delighted despite the sudden dampness beginning to soak into her sleeve, and continued forward into the small private storm surrounding the house, glancing back once over her shoulder to confirm that the dry lane behind her remained exactly as dry it had been a moment before, the willows there swaying gently in a breeze that carried, she now noticed, no rain of its own at all. The garden itself, she noticed as she approached, thrived in a way that suggested this particular arrangement had been going on for a very long time indeed. Moss grew thick and vivid green across the low garden wall, and ferns unfurled in generous, healthy clusters beneath the dripping eaves, clearly accustomed to exactly this much daily water and none of the harsh, dry stretches that troubled gardens elsewhere in town. A rain barrel stood beside the front door, already overflowing gently down one side, its excess forming a small, contented stream that wound its way off through the garden towards some lower point Nora couldn't quite see. Foxgloves grew tall and unusually vivid along one border, their spotted throats catching what little grey light filtered through the steady rain, and a small bird bath sat permanently, cheerfully overfull near the garden centre, though Nora saw no birds brave enough to visit it while she watched. A row of rain boots, 4 or 5 pairs in varying sizes, stood lined up neatly just inside the garden gate, weathered by years of exactly this use, and a child's wooden toy, a small boat with a faded blue sail, sat forgotten in the shallow stream running from the overflowing rain barrel, bobbing gently in place, as though someone, at some point in the house's long history, had simply left it there to sail forever in its own small, endless current. She made her way up the short garden path, rain falling steadily around her the entire way, soaking gradually through her jacket in a manner that felt, oddly, less like an inconvenience and more like some kind of gentle initiation, the house's own quiet way of greeting a new visitor. By the time she reached the front door, sheltered beneath a narrow overhang that offered the first real relief from the rain since she'd crossed into the garden, her hair had darkened with damp and her shoulders had grown pleasantly cool beneath her soaked jacket. She raised her hand to knock, and before her knuckles even reached the wood, the door opened, revealing an elderly man with a neat white beard, wearing a heavy knitted cardigan the color of wet slate, his eyes crinkling immediately into a warm, unsurprised smile, as though visitors of exactly this sort arrived at his door with some regularity. "You found us then," he said, stepping back to let her inside, his voice carrying the easy warmth of someone greeting a friend rather than a stranger. Come in, before you catch a proper chill. I'll put the kettle on." Nora stepped gratefully across the threshold into a warmth that closed around her immediately, thick and welcoming, carrying the scent of wood smoke, old books, and something rich and herbal drifting from somewhere further inside the house. The rain's steady patter continued clearly audible even indoors, drumming gently against the roof and windows, a sound so constant and unbroken that it seemed to form the very foundation of the house's quiet, a baseline beneath everything else that happened within these walls. "I'm sorry to intrude," Nora said, glancing down apologetically at the small puddle already forming beneath her soaked boots. "I heard about this place from the woman at the guest house in town, and I couldn't quite resist coming to see it myself." "No need to apologize," the man said, waving the concern away with an easy, unhurried gesture. "Everyone who finds their way out here does so on purpose, one way or another. The lane doesn't exactly advertise itself to folks who aren't already curious. I'm Thomas, by the way. This has been my house and my family's house before me for longer than either of us has time to properly discuss this afternoon." He led her through a short, book-lined hallway into a warm sitting room dominated by a large stone fireplace, its fire burning low and steady, throwing soft golden light across a comfortable arrangement of worn armchairs and a low wooden table scattered with teacups, an open book, and a small half-finished piece of knitting draped over the arm of the nearest chair. Rain streaked steadily down every window, blurring the small garden beyond into soft, shifting shapes of green and grey, and yet the room itself felt entirely dry and warm, a small contained pocket of comfort existing in cheerful defiance of the weather clinging so persistently to the house's exterior. A faded rug covered most of the wooden floor, its pattern worn soft in places by generations of footsteps, and a tall grandfather clock ticked steadily in one corner, its slow, patient rhythm blending easily with the rain's own steady percussion against the windows. A stack of neatly folded towels sat on a small stool near the door, clearly kept there for exactly this purpose, drying off whichever family member or visitor had most recently come in from the garden. "Sit, please," Thomas said, gesturing towards the armchair nearest the fire. "You'll want to dry off a bit before that tea does you any real good." Nora sank gratefully into the offered chair, feeling the fire's warmth begin gradually to counter the damp chill that had settled into her clothes during her short walk from the garden gate. She looked around the room properly while Thomas busied himself in what she assumed was a kitchen just out of sight, taking in the shelves crowded with old, well-loved books, a collection of small glass jars on the windowsill, each containing a different kind of dried flower, and a series of old photographs arranged along the mantelpiece, their subjects changing gradually across the decades, while the rain-streaked window behind each one remained, Nora noticed with quiet fascination, exactly the same in every single frame. Thomas returned a few minutes later, carrying a wooden tray with a teapot, 2 mismatched cups, and a small plate of shortbread, setting it carefully on the low table before settling into the armchair across from her with the unhurried ease of a man entirely at home in his own particular corner of the world. "I imagine you have questions," he said, pouring the tea with practiced, steady hands. "Most people do once they've dried off enough to start thinking clearly again." "I have quite a few, honestly," Nora admitted, accepting the offered cup gratefully, "though I hardly know where to begin. Has it really always rained here, for as long as your family's lived in this house?" "As far back as anyone can properly account for," Tommy said, settling back into his chair. "My grandmother used to say the house simply decided, a very long time ago, that it preferred rain to sunshine, and once a house makes up its mind about something like that, there's not much use arguing with it. She had a rather practical way of explaining most mysteries, my grandmother, never much interested in the why of a thing, so long as the how of living alongside it stayed manageable." "Did she ever tell you where the rain came from, even if she didn't know why?" Nora asked, genuinely curious now. Thomas considered the question for a moment, turning his teacup slowly in his hands. She had a story, passed down from her own grandmother, about a woman who once lived in this house, long before any of us, who loved the rain so completely that she couldn't bear the thought of a single dry day passing over her garden. Whether that's history, or simply a story grown comfortable with itself over the generations, I couldn't honestly say. I've stopped needing it to be one or the other. It explains enough for my purposes, and the tea's always warm, regardless of which version happens to be true." "And it doesn't bother you?" Nora asked, "living somewhere it never stops raining?" Thomas laughed, a warm, easy sound that filled the small room comfortably. "Bother me? My dear, I've never known anything else. This house raised me on the sound of rain the way other houses raise their children on the sound of birdsong or traffic or whatever noise happens to be theirs. I find the quiet quite unsettling, actually, whenever I travel elsewhere. Silence keeps me up half the night in a way this rain never has." He shook his head, smiling faintly at some private memory. "I visited my daughter in the city once, stayed a full week in her flat on the 14th floor. And do you know, I barely slept a wink the whole time, kept waking at odd hours, certain something was wrong, before I finally worked out it was simply the absence of rain against the window that had me so unsettled. Never had that particular trouble sleeping anywhere else in my life, before or since. He sipped his tea thoughtfully, glancing toward the rain-streaked window with an expression of easy, long-settled affection, the particular fondness of someone regarding not a burden, but a lifelong companion. The house takes care of its garden beautifully, at least, Nora offered, remembering the vivid moss and thriving ferns she had passed on her way in. Everything out there looked so healthy. That it does, Thomas agreed, nodding. Whatever this rain is, wherever it comes from, it's never once been unkind. Gentle, mostly, steady, the sort of rain that builds things up slowly rather than washing them away. I've come to think of it less as a curse, whatever the old stories in town might call it, and more like a particular kind of blessing that simply doesn't look, at first glance, like the blessings people usually expect. Nora turned that thought over quietly in her mind, sipping her own tea, watching the fire's steady light play warmly across the low wooden beams of the ceiling. Outside, the rain continued its patient, unhurried rhythm, audible even through the thick stone walls, a sound that had, she realized, already begun to feel less like an oddity and more like simply the house's particular comfortable voice. "Does anyone else live out here with you?" she asked. "It seems like rather a lot of house for one person." "My daughter grew up here," Thomas said, a note of quiet warmth entering his voice. "She's off in the city now, doing well for herself, though she visits when she can. Says the quiet of the city keeps her up at night same as it does me when I travel, and that she sleeps better here than anywhere else in the world, rain and all. I expect she'll take the house over herself, eventually, when I'm too old and creaky to properly manage the stairs. It seems to run in the family, this particular fondness for rain. I doubt she'd trade it for sunshine if someone offered." He refilled Nora's cup without being asked, the gesture easy and unhurried, and for a while they simply sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the rain's steady patter against the windows, the fire's low crackle providing a warm, textured counterpoint beneath it. Nora found herself, somewhat to her own surprise, in no particular hurry to leave, the small sitting room's particular blend of warmth and rain settling around her in a manner that felt increasingly less like a strange curiosity and more like an unexpected kind of homecoming. "You're welcome to stay a while longer if you like," Thomas said, as the afternoon light beyond the rain-streaked windows began its slow shift toward evening. "I don't often get company, and I confess I rather enjoy it when I do." Nora hesitated only briefly, weighing the practical matter of the darkening sky against the simple, undeniable comfort of the room around her, before deciding, with an ease that rather surprised her, to accept. "I'd like that," she said, "if it's really no trouble." "No trouble at all," Thomas said, clearly pleased. "I'll get the soup started. There's a spare room upstairs, made up and ready more often than not, in case you'd rather not walk back to town in the dark. The lane's easy enough by daylight, but rain makes for slippery footing on a night without a moon." He rose to attend to the kitchen, leaving Nora alone for a while with the fire and the rain and the quiet, comfortable room, its walls lined with decades of small, accumulated warmth. She rose after a moment to examine the mantelpiece photographs more closely, tracing the gradual changes across the generations pictured there. Different faces, different fashions, the same rain-streaked window behind every single one. patient and unchanging across what must have been the better part of a century. One photograph in particular caught her attention, older and faded than the rest, showing a young woman standing in the garden Nora had crossed earlier, laughing beneath an umbrella she wasn't quite using properly, tilted back to let the rain catch her upturned face instead. Something about the image, its easy, unguarded joy, settled warmly into Nora's chest, a small, wordless reminder that whatever strangeness surrounded this house, the people who had lived within it seemed, across every generation pictured, to have been entirely, uncomplicatedly happy here. Thomas returned some time later with news that the soup was simmering nicely, and the two of them settled back into their armchairs to wait, talking easily now about smaller things, Nora's travels, Thomas's decades spent tending this particular strange and generous patch of weather, the quiet, particular pleasures of a life built around something the rest of the world would likely never quite understand or need to. "Doesn't it get lonely?" Nora asked at one point, living somewhere so removed from everyone else in town. "Sometimes," Thomas admitted honestly, though less than you'd think. "The rain's rather good company once you learn its particular moods, and the town's not so far as all that, not really. I walk in for supplies every week or so, dry as anyone the moment I step past the garden wall. It's really only this small patch of ground that holds on to the rain so stubbornly. The rest of the world goes on exactly as it always has, just beyond the hedge." The soup, when it was finally ready, proved simple and warming, thick with root vegetables and some dark, savory herb Nora couldn't quite place, and they ate together at a small wooden table near the kitchen window, watching the rain continue its steady work outside as the last of the daylight finally gave way to a deep, comfortable evening dark. A loaf of dense, dark bread sat between them, still faintly warm from the oven, and Thomas insisted on refilling her bowl twice, waving off her polite protests with the easy insistence of someone who had clearly spent a lifetime cooking for more people than currently sat at his table. "My daughter used to help with the bread when she was small," he mentioned, cutting another slice for himself. "Stood right there on a stool, flour up to her elbows, more of it on the floor than in the bowl most days. I still make it the same way she liked it best, though there's rarely anyone left to share it with these days, beyond the occasional wandering guest who finds their way down the lane." "I'm glad I found my way down it then," Nora said, and meant it fully. After the meal, Thomas showed Nora up a narrow, creaking staircase to a small spare room tucked beneath the sloped roof, simply furnished with a narrow bed, a modest wooden dresser, and a single window through which the rain's steady patter sounded clear and close, a constant, gentle presence rather than any kind of disturbance. A thick hand-knitted blanket lay at the foot of the bed, its pattern uneven in the particular comforting way of things made slowly and with care, rather than purchased ready-made. A small watercolor painting hung above the dresser, clearly the work of a child's careful hand, depicting the house itself beneath its own private cloud, rain falling in careful blue lines, while a bright yellow sun shone undisturbed just beyond the garden wall. "My daughter painted that when she was 7 or 8, Thomas said, noticing Nora's gaze. "Insisted on hanging it up here herself, wobbly nail and all. I never did get around to straightening it properly, and now I rather think I'd miss the tilt if it ever went." "Sleep well," Thomas said, pausing in the doorway, with a small oil lamp casting warm light across the low wooden threshold. "The rain will look after you tonight, same as it's looked after this house and everyone in it for longer than anyone properly remembers. There's porridge in the morning whenever you happen to wake, No particular rush about any of it. He left Nora alone with the room's quiet warmth, his footsteps fading softly back down the narrow staircase, and she changed slowly into the simple night clothes he had left folded on the dresser, climbing into the narrow bed and pulling the hand-knitted blanket up over her shoulders. The rain continued steadily beyond the small window, its rhythm unbroken, unhurried, filling the whole small room with a sound so constant it seemed less like weather and more like the house's own slow, patient breathing. Nora lay quietly for a while, listening to that steady rhythm, letting her thoughts drift back over the strange, gentle afternoon that had led her here. The impossible clean line where dry ground gave way to wet, the moss-covered garden wall, Thomas's easy, unhurried affection for a weather pattern most people would have fled the moment they encountered it. She thought about how quickly her initial curiosity had settled into something closer to comfort, how naturally this small, rain-soaked house had folded her into its particular rhythm, as though it had simply been waiting, patiently, for exactly the kind of visitor who wouldn't need convincing to stay. She thought of the young woman in the old photograph, laughing beneath her improperly angled umbrella, face upturned to catch the rain rather than avoid it, and understood, in a way she couldn't quite have articulated back at the guest house 2 days earlier, why anyone might choose this particular gentle strangeness over the wider world's more conventional weather. There was something deeply reassuring, she thought, drifting slowly towards sleep, about a place that simply knew with total and unwavering certainty exactly what it was, and had never once wasted a moment doubting whether that certainty made sense to anyone standing outside its garden wall. The rain outside showed no sign of stopping, falling steadily over the whole small house, over the moss-thick garden wall, over the overflowing rain barrel and its small, contented stream, over the willow-lined lane leading back toward the dry, ordinary town beyond the hedge. It fell, too, over the mantelpiece downstairs, where decades of photographs kept their quiet watch behind the same rain-streaked window, generation after generation finding, apparently without exception, exactly the same easy peace Nora now felt settling over her in this small room beneath the sloped roof. Her breathing slowed gradually, matching the rain's steady, unhurried rhythm, her whole body loose and warm beneath the thick, hand-knitted blanket. Somewhere below, she could hear the faint, comfortable sounds of Thomas settling the house for the night, a door closing softly, the low murmur of a fire being banked for the evening, and then, gradually, silence beneath the rain, the whole house easing itself toward the same deep, contented rest that had already begun to claim her. She thought, in the last drifting moments before sleep finally arrived, that she understood now why the woman at the guest house had spoken of this house so softly, not as a warning at all, but as something closer to a secret kept gently, almost protectively from anyone who might not know how to receive it properly. Some places, she thought, simply needed to be found by exactly the right kind of visitor, someone willing to step across an impossible boundary and let themselves get thoroughly, happily soaked before they could understand what waited warmly on the other side. She thought, too, of the stubborn, unfinished novel waiting for her back at the guest house, and felt, for the first time in many months, something loosen gently in her chest at the thought of it, some small, borrowed permission drawn from this house's own easy certainty that not everything needed a tidy explanation in order to be good and true and worth returning to day after unhurried day. Somewhere between one soft breath and the next, between the rain's steady patter and the house's own deep settling quiet, Nora slipped gently into sleep, entirely at peace within the one small corner of the world that had decided long before she arrived and would long after she left to keep its own weather and to welcome warmly and without exception whoever the rain happened to lead to its door.